But don't you think at the very least disclosures are important, like to what Taiki's talking about, what KOLs are doing, how they're, I wouldn't say tricking people, but how people are sort of being deceived and not seeing like the core premise behind what they're buying.
We have to self-regulate, right? That's why Zach XVT is really important.
Zach is just like, he's tracking down North Koreans, which thank you, Zach. I love you. But, he's not stopping the game. He's just sort of stopping some of the North Korean hackers, which is great. There's a bigger game. And the reality is the money is too big. There's too much at stake. Welcome, everybody. We have episode 62 of Steady Lads. It is an exciting week. Market's back. Are we so back, guys?
Feels that way. Yeah, everything's going well. It's exciting.
Yeah, the market's bottomed token 2049 last year. And now it seems like it's repeating. Maybe the bullish conference is finally a thing.
It seems like mid-September every year is just sort of when, except for the FTX year. That's like the only one. But for the other times, look, it's random, but it does seem to be a confluence. And this year, what I've been saying for the last weeks, for anyone following my Twitter, is just basically like macro is such a big factor, and we've had a bit of a perfect storm of macro right now. Obviously, stocks are printing all-time highs every day. Gold is printing all-time highs every day. It's only reasonable that we get at least like a bit of a push on crypto markets, even though Bitcoin and ETH are way, especially ETH, way below all-time highs. Let's get a couple of charts up, guys. But it is the first time in a while, in 6 months, that we're having a lot of altcoins pump quite a lot. Like the weeklies on some of these starts to be pretty significant. Oh boy, Shiba Inu, our old friend,
oh my gosh,
28%. Yeah, Cardano
Coins are pumping
more than everything else on the list. Cardano is up more than all of the top 10.
My bold prediction, I actually I can't even say it. I was gonna say it's ETH season, but I just can't say that with a straight face. But it feels that way, right? Solana was so consensus at token 2049 that it was scary. Like it was genuinely very scary. Everyone we met was bullish on the Solana ecosystem. Solana had their own conference. It went very well, but it was so consensus. I mean, token is more of like a Solana themed event, I would say, but no one was talking about Ethereum. It was fascinating.
Well, let's look at a chart that someone posted, which was the non-top 3 chart. So it's the market cap of all the coins except the top 3 coins. Cool. So here we have it. So this is basically shitcoin. We don't have the top 4 coins or stable coins. So it looks like we had a huge like doubling around March. Just a very, very sudden 1 month doubling from $270 billion of altcoins to 470. And the summer has been pretty choppy in the 200s, and now we're at 315, guys. So I think that's why the sentiment is is getting better on crypto Twitter. A lot of people are holding, the dog coins and the frogs and some of the things going up here.
Yeah, it seems like there's like a lot of confluence, I guess you could say, in the market. We've got rate cuts just hit. I know, Jordy, you think that might not be as effective as the rest of the market thinks. We've got the election coming up. Gold is ripping. Stocks are basically at all-time highs. It's just a really fascinating space for the market because it also feels like, I mean, we've talked about this before, but the economy is a little shaky, right? Unemployment's going up pretty quickly. So we'll see. But I mean, at token, it was exciting. I mean, everyone's so bullish on this space, and it really does feel like the end of this year going into next year is really going to be a bull market on the likes that we saw in 2021 and 2022.
And don't you guys think that, I mean, I had this general thesis that the election is bullish no matter what because it removes uncertainty. We have like Kamala saying, we're trying to innovate on digital assets and blockchains. And, Mark Cuban is even trying to be the SEC chair and whatnot. So I feel like there's a lot of fear around the outcome of the election, but I don't really think the outcome matters. Of course it matters, but, I think either way, the removal of uncertainty, I think, is bullish all around. And I think as we get closer, there's like less reasons to be afraid, especially with risk assets like ripping.
So guys, like one of the top crypto traders asked me this morning if I'm bullish. He said he was kind of not sure, and he wasn't bullish or bearish. He was staying out of the market. I told him I'm very positive over the next month, and the reasons are, one, China is easing, and this was like a headline that when I saw it, I just knew it was going to change the entire fabric of the macro. I mean, China, for everyone who hasn't been following, has not been in a good economic situation for the entire year. They had the housing crisis where, they were way over leveraged. This was the equivalent of 2008 housing crisis in the US. They were going through that. And for some reason, the government refused to bail out. Like, they were not printing money. They were not reducing rates. They had a bit of an austerity. And a couple of days ago, for the first time, China has aggressively signaled that they will now start to ease financial conditions. Not exactly sure what was the difference that made them do that, but for markets, it's a very clear bull signal. So we have that. We have Kamala kind of at least showing that she's not going to nuke everything if she wins. So there's a lot of people fighting on how much those words mean anything, but it's not a bad thing that, she's being more positive. And the other thing is, like, I've been tracking this Binance whale for a while. It's been short 15,000 Bitcoin. It's about $1 billion Bitcoin. And that whale, had a chance to take a good amount of profit around 55K, which is where we were, a couple of weeks ago. Did not take profit. Now macro has caught up. And as we speak right now, I can see them on the Binance books chasing with 500 Bitcoin clips, like their signature. They're just chasing to get out. So I think they've gotten out of 1/3 so far. There's still some to go, but this is obviously like a bullish catalyst that, there's this like forced buying going on. So quite a lot of forced demand. And then on the supply side, the government doesn't seem to have any immediate clips going on.
Also, like, one insight from Token is I had the pleasure of talking to a lot of fund managers, liquid and VC. And I think the complaint amongst the crypto native crowd is that there's a lot of money pouring into the private markets, but not the liquid markets. But I think the consensus for the next, let's say, 1 to 2 years is that liquid will outperform venture. So even a lot of VC funds, they're also spinning up liquid funds, and all those dollars will eventually hit the altcoin market, right? Because LPs aren't paying 2 and 20 for people to like buy Bitcoin and ETH. So I also think that could also be bullish, like a good tailwind for the altcoin market as more capital flows to like investable altcoins.
It has gotten dangerous for the shorters of altcoins right now. So we talked about Cole's World last week, I think, or a couple of weeks ago. We had Zoran Cole. Seems like he's deleted all his tweets and he's taking some time off. So I think even Thicky's kind of, treading pretty lightly in this market. It's kind of dangerous. You start getting into redacted season when things start popping off. I like Miles Deutscher. He called it it's a popcorn market because you just have these like random pops of random corns at different times, and those are the different altcoins. I have to say I feel mixed about all of this because on the one hand, I'm happy that coins are going up and sentiment's improving and Bitcoin is sort of like racing back up to all-time highs. On the other hand, as we just showed, like the top performing coins are Cardano, Shiba. We can go through the list. They might not be sending our best, and it's a sign that we're in unsustainable kind of territory once again.
Yeah, have you guys heard about this Mu Deng meme coin?
Yes,
unfortunately. Can you share some of that?
Mu Deng is, I think, one of the best performers of the last few days. It's sort of taken crypto Twitter by storm. I mean, just look at this thing. It's one of those meme coins where you're seeing the tweets go out that like if you had $2,000 of this meme coin a week ago or 2 weeks ago, you'd now have $2 million, and people are posting their fumbles about it. But this thing is just gone to the banana zone. It's pretty nuts.
I think what we'd be telling is, Justin, if you share my screen. literally up only because the CoinGecko chart doesn't really show like previous price history, but like it literally started from zero. Now it's like 150. So, animal spirits. I feel like 2 weeks ago everyone was like, "Oh my god, it's
Literally animal
over."
spirits.
Death of memes. Yeah, yeah. And now it's like, oh yeah, like Mudeng is the future of finance. So.
Yeah, FTV 142, liquidity 2.4. So it's one of those like standard pump fund coins, I guess, where the liquidity is about 1.5%. And so if everybody sells this $100 million asset, they will end up with like $2 million or 1.2 to be exact.
So we've gone from dog season to hippo season. So this is, for those that don't know, this is Mudeng. I think Mudeng's in Thailand, so there's some chatter that we might get this hippo to make an appearance at DevCon in Bangkok. We'll have to see.
Let's get into like a bit of a serious topic, which is very related, and also related to the fact that, as we were saying last week at Token, the place was full of booths of companies we haven't heard of. The stage that we were on is like this massive company we haven't heard of, Zebu, the Zebu stage. Like, I mean, by the way, good advertising, Zebu. Like, clearly we're doing a lot of spreading your name out. What I kind of feel like is that there's a game. The game is worth about $10 to $20 billion a year, which is more than most criminal organizations make in, drugs or other things. So it's a big game. And the game is get the retail to buy your shitcoin. Okay? This is the game. There's a lot of money in this game. It's worth investing and like doing all kinds of stuff. Even like quasi-criminal stuff, because ultimately, how many people get assassinated for less than $10 to $20 billion? So where does this number come from? I think every year the crypto market attracts participants in this casino that we've created. And some of it goes to exchanges in terms of fees, because they're the picks and shovels. And I think, Bybit's going to make about $3 billion this year. Binance probably going to make, $8 billion. And then maybe like all the other exchanges maybe make like another 5 or 6. So there's 20 billion just for the exchanges. This is just like fees. This is like for the exchanges that have made it easy money. Then you have the tethers of the world that, what are they making? Like 5 billion or something, 5-6 billion from treasury yields, just from being the stable coin on which this casino is running. So let's call it another 5 billion. So you have 25 there. And then you have the last bucket. So the last bucket is the people who actually own the coins and they're selling the coins. This bucket, I've estimated to be, in a good year, 20 billion. In like, a crappy year like last year, maybe like 10 billion. A lot of it is coming through Korea. I would say like close to a third, maybe a quarter, like 25 to 30%, which is a lot. It's a lot for one country that's not like a massive country. And then the rest of it is sort of like distributed. Obviously, like there's a lot in the US, and then Europe and your BRICS countries. China, pretty big. Even though, technically they're not allowed to access stuff. Who gets this money? There seems to be a chance factor to it and a sort of pre-planning factor to it. And when I say chance, it just means that, without like really planning to, your coin got associated somewhere at the right time with a certain group, it kind of picked up fire and it became like the Mudeng kind of scenario. I mean, teams like yours, Justin, like you're trying to be one of those. I mean, you haven't launched a coin. You've been trying to be like a legit building team to find product market fit. I know you've been building for a long time and you've been talking to me about how, you're looking for that product market fit. As we've talked about in crypto, like there's the DApp and there's a token, and you've been trying to find DApp product market fit without trying to get a token, right?
Yeah, that's correct. It's been really hard. I mean, because part of me wonders if that, like you were talking about, if the token market fit, how much of that is luck-based? I mean, of course, there's like this selection bias where all of the tokens we hear about and talk about are the ones that do well. But there is such a long graveyard of projects that launch tokens that were big in their day and have just literally gone to zero and are not getting picked up in this wave. One notable one, our project, we started building in the NFT space and pivoted to ERC20s and now pivoting to social. And when we launched our first version of the app, our biggest competitor was this project called NFTFi. And they've done, I think, hundreds of millions of dollars of NFT loans, product market fit, but their token has effectively just gone to zero. It's a $782,000 market cap, 7.3 million. And this is like very confusing for me because a lot of the advice we get from people is like, no one's going to care about you until you launch your token. And I think that is true to some extent. But then you have this like other outcome, which is probably like the most likely outcome when you launch your token, is it actually just goes to zero like this and it doesn't become one of the tokens we're talking about and are getting hyped. So it is tough for us to navigate. And honestly, I'm not really sure where we go from here.
I mean, you've seen a ton of companies make 9 figures plus,
Yeah.
Polymarket, OpenSea, Pump Fund without having a token. So, it is possible to get the speculation game right and not have a token. What I want to discuss is that if you're building and you're in this game of the token game, you can accept and like know what game you're playing and just try to play it and just say, fuck it, I'm playing this game. We're going to try to get part of this $20 billion that is entering the market over a year. You can do it as a grift and just do it openly. I talk to some founders and they just tell me, look, I'm just trying to get a piece of this pie. Like this whole space is one big grift, and I'm gonna retire after I do it. And I'm gonna make my millions and like leave. Sounds really bad, right? But actually, it's not the worst. I kind of respect the honesty. I respect the directness, and I respect.
But they're honest to you, Jordy. Are they honest to the space in general when they're launching these tokens?
No, but at least they know they're consciously aware of the game they're playing. And that's more than I can say about the worst group for me, which is the pretenders who act as if, they're playing this like beautiful, try to save the world, I'm doing good and I'm just like gonna decentralize the future and give freedom to the masses. But then like this is still the game that they're playing. They're still trying to like extract.
So I think this is like a journey that every builder goes on. I think if you don't have like immediate success and you're not one of the like 1% of projects that have an immediate hit on their hands, there's this cynicism where you start like very idealistic. And I know me and my co-founder went through that, where it is like you're sort of like this decentralization maxi and you're like trying to build new financial primitives and you really believe that like in 10 years, all of our financial system's going to run on DeFi rails. And then over time, as like you have failures and hiccups and mistakes, I think a healthy cynicism develops where you sort of understand where the market's at right now in crypto, what product you're actually trying to build for users and what users want. And most users that are like on-chain native users just want speculative money games at this point. And I think like most builders sort of arrive at that conclusion just based on who we've had on the show and talked to and whatnot.
Yeah, there's a range. I think we'll get into like some of the VC games and how their role sometimes is like the worst because they're not even building. Like they're just literally trying to, get their bags pumped at the right time. But Taiki, I want to kind of get some of your thoughts because you are the exact opposite. I mean, you've like turned down, we talked about before, all the viewers know that you've turned down all kinds of seed deals in the past and you've tried to play straight arrow and you're not nearly as rich as these guys that have gone the other route.
You just call me poor.
Yeah, I'm just using your own words. I mean,
Okay.
It's what you say. So I know you're young and you have a long career ahead of you and your credibility is going to be an asset and you're building that. So I respect that a lot. But surely, when you see some of this stuff or when you hear about it, how do you feel?
From my point of view, right? I've operated with like no ads, no sponsors, like that type of mentality. Like I'm trying to be like uncorruptible, but sometimes, right, like I see how much like Bankless and like all these media companies make per episode, and it's like people still watch them, right? And like they're printing money. It's like, do people really care if I start running ads and I like made $1 million or $2 million off of like sponsorship fees? For me, I think that the reason why people like me, right, is like one, I'm a mid curve, right? I'm relatable. And two, I do have like a North Star of having some values and morals, and ultimately selfishly, right? It's like in the short term, I make way less money than everyone else in terms of like from content. But I think over the longer term, I think it'll give me more opportunities because like I went to school studying like marketing and branding. And that's why I take branding really seriously. And I also have like my personal ambitions. Like I want to like write like my own Netflix show one day, right? And maybe this type of brand ethos will get me there.
I mean, I love the goals, but let me like try to like touch on your like heartstrings a little bit because
okay.
I think I've seen things over the last like 4 years in the space. I've been in rooms that no one else has been in, and I've probably in the whole space, I would say I'm one of like the top 10 people that I've seen some shit. There's certain things that start to get to me. One is the Korea thing specifically. I bring it up a lot. I'm seeing like clear evidence that we're dealing with a country with a birth rate of 0.68. Okay. Why is the birth rate 0.68 in Korea? Because like young people don't feel like they have like financial comfort to raise kids. And that like prevents them from wanting to start a family. So they're kind of resorting to a lot of speculation, right? Like it's just like a hugely gambling culture. You go there, you see it in the streets, you see it everywhere. They got burned by Luna. And so I'm trying to ask around when I'm there, like, how are they deciding to buy a certain coin? And part of it is calculation. So if you see like Aptos, for example, or, Sui, like some of these companies, they spent a lot of effort, a lot of their chips of like time and effort on building a community there. They run all these hackathons and they try to get like the media there. Obviously it's worked. And I think part of the reason why it's worked is because they have association with Western brands that are very big. So there seems to be an obsession in Asia, especially like, certain parts of Asia with American like premier brands like Meta, like Facebook, right? So Aptos, Sui came out of Facebook. You have WorldCoin. So WorldCoin, OpenAI, everyone's talking about OpenAI. There's more that I can mention. Obviously, like there's obsession with some of the big financial companies and stuff as well. So what ends up happening is that the gamble culture combines with like a belief that like there's a safety in betting on a Silicon Valley or like a Wall Street brand, and literally hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, are funneled from a nation into the treasury of one of these projects, which might just be like a couple guys, basically. It's kind of undeniable that this is happening right now. It's both fascinating and terrifying.
So do you see this as just like a massive wealth transfer where it just doesn't end well for these Korean buyers, but the teams in the US mostly are making off like kings?
Yes, that is well put.
Yeah, and I think what I've seen as well is after Singapore, it's like I get like a bunch of marketing firms like coming out to me. It's like, oh yeah, like I can offer you this package where we'll give you this many tokens, and for the next month, just bull post, and then you'll make free money. So it's kind of this wealth transfer from like less educated retail degens to KOLs and also, I guess, big teams with treasuries where they can eventually sell OTC or something. So yeah, like, I've seen some shit too, Jordy, you definitely see more shit, but
what are those allocations you're seeing, Taiki? Like for KOLs, like 10 bips, 20 bips, 50 bips, like what are the offers that you see?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like that much. It's usually like 5 to 6 figures of tokens in exchange of like bull posting, essentially. And none of these KOLs like disclose, right? Maybe they slightly disclose it, like, I'm sponsored or whatever. But like, no, because if you're a KOL, like you don't want to be transparent, right? Because then you're basically telling your audience that, hey, I'm getting 100K from this project. So it's kind of like this adverse incentives, misaligned incentives, let's say.
So, but Taiki, like to pull on your decision making and heartstrings a little more, like what's better to be like Bankless, where you're like publicly very transparent about what you're supposed to shill and who's paying your budget, or like these KOLs that don't disclose that and have these private deals but don't have the public sponsorships?
I guess this is why a bunch of KOLs are well liked in crypto, like on Twitter. Like they don't disclose, and then they get free tokens, they bull post. It goes up because they bull post, and then they're like, oh my God, like if you followed me, you guys would have made so much money. Whereas Bankless, it's like, oh, they make like X dollars per episode, and then it's really easy for everyone else to hate on them. It's really easy to hate on Bankless. I think that's one of their problems. I have nothing against Bankless, honestly, but I guess it's also like pulling on the heartstrings of traders, because traders want to make money. They flock to people that make right calls. But sometimes these right calls it's like a direct result of like people shilling, coordinated shilling. Yeah. So I think that's part of the problem too.
I feel like what we're getting at is this is all leading towards a conversation about regulation, but I don't know if that solves it, because we're in a global market. I mean, yes, in the US we can regulate, but where everyone has access to these assets, I just don't see that being a good solution.
Regulation is the exact opposite of the solution because it just leads to things we've had in the past, right? Like the OneCoin, right? Like the BitConnect, like all this kind of stuff.
But don't you think at the very least disclosures are important, like to what Taiki's talking about, what KOLs are doing, how they're, I wouldn't say tricking people, but how people are sort of being deceived and not seeing like the core premise behind what they're buying.
We have to self-regulate, right? That's why Zach XVT is really important.
Zach is just like, he's tracking down North Koreans, which thank you, Zach. I love you. But, he's not stopping the game. He's just sort of stopping some of the North Korean hackers, which is great. There's a bigger game. And the reality is the money is too big. There's too much at stake. One of the telling things that there's something wrong is that I frequently meet marketing people in this space. Their whole job is, getting micro KOLs for projects, or maybe some big KOLs sometimes. They'll have like people in Turkey and China and different countries, and they'll get results for projects. They're in this industry. They're doing very well, and they don't even know who anybody is. Like Hasib is next to them, and they're like, "Who's this guy?" I don't know. Like the founders of all
I've
the big
seen that too.
protocols,
Yeah,
they're like, "I don't know who these people are," but they're in the industry for years, and they have a business, and this business is obviously like sought out and it has results. So there's a game going on, and look, I'm not here to like fully moralize. I think it's more of a reflection because when you look at casinos, they're offering what's clearly a negative sum game. You play roulette, you play blackjack, baccarat, you're going to lose money most of the time, or over the long haul all the time, right? And I think with these meme coin roulettes and all this stuff, the sophisticated version, sophisticated ignorance, as Jay-Z says, is like trying to bet on these like non-top 2, top 3 coins and trying to get the narrative before it shifts and then jump to the next narrative. So what we've seen last week is that you just get this like, oh, Sui, okay, then it's gonna be like Say because it sounds like Sui, and then it's gonna be like that. So like this stuff it gives you a bit of a chance to win, and people play this game. But
so this is Jordy. You think this is going to get even crazier over the next year, right? Assuming we have this massive bull market that kicks off, I assume you think this is only going to increase, right?
Yeah, and my goal, I guess, is to make it a bit more sustainable. And when I say sustainable, idiots are going to lose money. That's the way. It's the way of the world. You have a poker game economy where like the fish are going to lose money to the sharks, right? But if you design it in a way where they're getting some rake back and maybe like, there's a cap on how much they can buy in at any time, maybe the game can last forever because you're not like fleecing them and then they just, never come back. You're sort of keeping the rate of attrition healthy where it's sustainable, My fear is that we get these deep winters because like FTX is one example where so many legitimate institutions got burnt that it just created like a year-long just completely cold. Like in Singapore, Temasek was involved. They invested. And then the government just like stopped approving any activity, any licenses, anything in the space. Same with, in the US, obviously you have Millennium, a lot of companies that were invested and then just like froze all activity, all investment in the space. I would have preferred that not to happen. Part of the equation is who owns the bags, who's selling these coins, these $20 billion of coins. We have, founders, which, fair enough, they've created something. You have all these like people around them, employees that got tokens. You have all these foundation heads that they have to set up. And then, of course, you also have either investors or like liquid funds that bought in. And it seems to be that around the time of these like massive unlocks, there's a lot of planning to try to create good sentiment for the price. And one of the main examples going on right now, of course, everybody knows is Celestia. So Chris Bernisky has been kind of getting a lot of crossfire on September 14th, which is a couple weeks before the first unlock, just put out a thread saying that he is longing TIA while haters spinelessly pile on downside momentum. Okay. And then he goes on, you will be haunted by the thought that instead of cheating, I could have been buying TIA under $5. One thing that's triggered a lot of people here is that he has quote tweeted his Solana correct thesis from December 2022, which was almost 2 years ago when FTX collapsed. And when he said that they should buy under $10, which gave him a lot of credibility. And he seems to be using it 2 years later to cash in on trying to equate Solana at $10 with Celestia at $5. What you laugh, Justin. I'm curious what you make of this.
So this tweet happened September 14th, and then we fast forward to this week, so like around the 24th, 23rd, Celestia announced an $100 million fundraising round, bringing the total raise to $155 million, which sounds incredibly bullish. But these teams are getting so good at sort of obfuscating what's happening behind the scenes. So like normally you think, oh, $100 million from investors, like people believe in the vision, they want this token, etc. But then Sisyphus quote tweeted here with some like inside information that this was an OTC deal done at a $3.5 billion valuation directly with the foundation. So this means the foundation is just basically selling TIA tokens at a discount with some sort of a lockup. It's just interesting that, so Chris is basically shilling before the unlock, then Celestia is going around. They're actually just basically cashing out. And in some ways, this is reasonable treasury management. It makes sense. But they're pitching this on Twitter and trying to like tell basically their audience that we have $100 million of VC funding coming in, when really this is just like a very simple OTC sale that, you know, like many market makers would be excited about. They're able to hedge out their risk. They're able to short exposure and deal with the unlocks. But they're basically trying to pitch this as like a bullish thing when actually it's actually kind of bearish, right?
It depends like what your view on Celestia is, right? Like if you think it's going to go to zero, then you think it's unethical behavior. But there is a chance that he is right.
I don't think the path is what matters here. I don't think Celestia is going to zero or anything like that. I think it's more just like shilling an OTC sale at a discount to like sophisticated financial actors that can hedge out exposure. And that's exactly what they're doing. It's like a bullish thing that we should be excited about going into the unlock.
Yeah. The also like, even if you're like a Celestia bull, the unethical part here is that like all the people, like, so there's been a lot of shilling for Celestia by like liquid funds or like just funds in general, by people that participated in the sale, knowing that this was going to be announced like around this time. So, you know, there's also like this liquid game that people can play where, oh, like if I know, like if I invested in this OTC deal and I know that it's going to be announced and funding rate is negative, then let's just buy a fuck ton of these tokens via perps, push funding like super negative, squeeze them, and then, you know, claim that we were right. So it's kind of like this, some form of like insider trading as well. It's kind of similar to like what happened to CRV, like where all these CRV people that bought the token OTC just longed it on perps, most likely, squeeze people, claim they were right. But you know, it's kind of like this insider trading in a sense. I'm not sure if that's
totally.
Yeah. So
Jordy, you're just saying you're in the room where it happens. We can cut this part out if you don't want to talk about it. But like, what were the conversations like surrounding this $100 million Celestia OTC sale? Like, can you talk a little bit about the profile of the buyer? Like, is it someone that's investing for the long term, or is it like a sophisticated actor that is going to hedge out their exposure by shorting, and isn't like a true investor in the sense that they're like long-term bullish?
I mean, these are kind of sophisticated long-term holders. Let's say like Bain Capital, I think did 40% of it. So Bain obviously is a sophisticated institution, but they're not just like a trading firm. You know, they're going to try to play out their thesis a bit. Generally, when you see more tokens being sold, it should, you know, it's very unsophisticated of the market to take it as like a bullish or bearish signal. Ultimately, it's increasing the supply because those tokens did not exist as part of the market cap. Now they are kind of predestined to join the market cap. Ultimately, that's more selling pressure coming at some point. I think the perps are part of the problem. We've talked about it before, that they're a very imperfect instrument and that calendar futures would have been cleaner. Like if people, instead of betting on squeezing each other on funding rates, and, you know, even Chris Berniski's, his second tweet is like talking about the funding rate, and like he's just so excited that you can squeeze people, and the people you're squeezing are basically, from what I hear, you know, some big companies like Falcon X or Galaxy will offer like hedging services for people who are waiting for their unlocks. So they'll charge, you know, like 20%, something 30%, I'm hearing, for, you know, putting the hedge on for a month and taking the risk of the funding rate, see what happens. If there was a delivery future on November 1st after the unlocks happened, there wouldn't be any funding rates and people can just sort of bet on that delivery of that exact date. I think that would be a lot cleaner from like a financial sense. But we don't really have those things popular for altcoins. I think FTX was the only exchange that actually had those things, and maybe they were kind of providing liquidity in them. I don't know, but I remember that FTX had all kinds of altcoin quarterly expiries that at least avoid the funding rate.
Jordy, when like someone sees this on Twitter, I mean, would you basically the advice you would give is don't take these messages to be bullish or bearish?
It kind of like makes you think like which part of the puzzle can be most fixed from what is clearly a bit of a broken system. I'm not sure if it's just education of retail, because that's such a difficult thing that happens over many mistakes and over a long time. Regulation doesn't seem to be the golden bullet. Like it's not the silver bullet either. I would say like the thing that's disappointed me the most is one, the exchanges. Even like the major exchanges are not really doing their part to prevent much of what's going on, either the market manipulation or the listings, that they choose to do. There seems to be kind of a willingness to run it as a casino rather than, a financial exchange to a certain extent.
I think for me, I think Chao also mentioned this, but like the externality of all these games is that people are just going to meme coins because instead of PvPing against team and investors, they can just PvP each other, and then it's like a
isn't it the same? I mean, we've talked about this. There's no.
I know.
It's actually
the perception. The perception.
No,
is that right?
Yeah, the perception is that correct. But it's actually worse because I've also seen the insider games on the meme coin land.
Yeah. It's pretty bad.
It's worse. It's worse. Like something like Popcat, some of these new ones, 80% of it is like centrally owned.
I think this is why everyone graduates to like Bitcoin over enough time. It's like the more you see, it's like the more it's just easier to just simplify your life and just hold Bitcoin, right? Like Ethereum to some extent is sort of dependent on this like casino and these money games continuing. Same with Solana. And then like buying and holding things like TIA, you just really don't know what you're going to get. Sure, it could become the next Sol and perform really well, but you're also probably going to get dumped on by VCs. And for me, this has been sort of like my transition to like, I think I'm slowly graduating towards just being a Bitcoin only person at some point.
I know that. Yeah. After talking to Justin, this happened. It's like he started ETH Maxi, and now he's like, like after the cycle, I'm only gonna buy Bitcoin. Like that, he literally switched in like a year.
You're gonna have you seen this song? You can play this song, and this is gonna be Justin very soon.
For one,
you're gonna be singing.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks for coming out tonight. We're the Maxis, the #1 Bitcoin-only band in the world.
I love
this little number is very special to us. Take it away, boys.
Take me to the moon, to the bank in cyberspace.
I love this.
You're the only one no central wanker can debase. In other words, scarce and true. In other words,
Justin is so happy.
I love you.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing, Jordy. I love that.
It's gonna be you. Look, like for financial investment, clearly, low stress, right? For dopamine seekers and people trying to have PvP and play games and like.
And also, if you want to make it, you can't make it to the same degree with Bitcoin at this point.
Right. If you want 100x, 1000x, it's not going to be Bitcoin.
Even a shorter 10x, right? That's literally impossible this cycle.
Correct. So if you're kind of like going after the moon in the literal sense, you actually want to like massively multiply, play this scratch off lottery ticket, then you need to enter the shitcoin casino.
The elder statesmen of crypto all say this, which is really interesting. Your first cycle, you got to learn by like you're gambling on shitcoins. You're like really trying to make it. And you have like some, if you get in at the right time and you're like really being really speculative, you're going to have some success. I had that story too. And then you sort of graduate to like more let's say, long-term sustainable bags. Like for me, my second cycle was like an Ethereum thing. And then, your third cycle, you've like built up like your crypto assets over the last 4 to 8 years. And at that point, you just graduate to Bitcoin, which I think is like the ultimate Bitcoin bull case. It's like eventually everyone graduates to Bitcoin.
I don't know. I just think there's different people have different outcomes they're trying to achieve and different ways that they might achieve it. So the casino will always grow.
Stays open. The casino stays open.
Yeah, because like the majority of the market is ruled by people that want to make it, right? Speculating on stuff. And that you kind of need to speculate on like a bunch of garbage or not garbage, but but I think we all have to understand that the game has gotten harder. I think people have this conception that like one day retail will come and all our shit's gonna 100x, but I think it's a lot harder than that. So in order to make it, I think you have to like really work hard. You have to understand the game, figure out like what you're good at, what your edge is, and just push it. Don't be a jack of all trades, master of none. Just hone in on your skills, whether it be trading or developing things or investing. And I think that's ultimately how you make it, not by just like hopelessly like waiting for retail to come back and hoping your random coins go up like 1,000,000%.
But that's what's happening.
Have you seen Mudang?
Yes.
Like there's the poker player in us, right? That is just sort of like wanting to get away from the moralizing of taking grandma's money and just wanting to play the game as well as possible. And we just want to get the right strategy that's going to maximize EV. Taiki and previously Fiki, I think, were really understanding what that mindset at least is. For us as podcast hosts that are trying to give some alpha, I think part of our role is to discuss the good strategies. But I think at the same time, a bit of self-reflection and like collective understanding. I think ultimately what I would want to achieve is the game is not going to go away. It's going to be there. PvP, all these things going to like play out, evolve, become more sophisticated. I think the thing I want to change is what is that? Like the lack of pretense that any of this matters. I think we should just understand that we're playing a game. It's not poker, but it's the shitcoin game. This is how the game works, and we're all in it. Even Ethereum and Bitcoin to a certain extent are part of that game, because if you look at those things, they're not without whales, right? Like even Bitcoin has people that own 100, 200,000 Bitcoin. If Bitcoin goes up too much, then they're the ones sort of able to dump and win the ultimate game. So let's go to Pass of the Week and remember that it's all a game. Taiki, you want to kick off?
Yeah, so last week, for whatever reason, I was able to hang out with Vitalik and other DeFi Chad founders building things. I was the only one that was not a dev that happened to be there. And I posted this picture on Twitter. Justin, if you can pull up the wholesome post. It's just me, DeFi will be great again. And then Jez, my friend here, the post, it's like, this seems like one person doesn't belong in that photo. I literally felt like this when I was like sitting in that table. I was like, well, how am I here?
You're basically the head of the table there too, with Kane.
Exactly. I was telling Vitalik what to do on this. Just kidding. It was a wholesome discussion, wholesome breakfast. But
did they go around the table like each saying like how many billions are in their protocol, and then it came to you, and you're like,
Actually, it was like 90 degrees out, and it was like really hot, and we were like buying water and stuff, and then we were having a discussion, who pays for this, and then whose ever project has the biggest market cap has to pay, and then Vitalik was like, all right, I got you guys.
So Vitalik covered everybody. That's sweet.
Vitalik covered for the water. Lunch we paid for ourselves.
I'm sure, like
austerity measures. ETH isn't doing too hot.
I know. I had to pay for my breakfast. I was like, what? I thought they were going to pay for it.
So, there any big takeaways? Like, are you more bullish the Ethereum ecosystem? Less bullish? Do you think Vitalik's listening?
Vitalik's definitely not listening. But I did show him Steady Lad, so at some point he'll come. But I think the one main takeaway was that Kane was kind of complaining, like, Vitalik, you're not really, like, we're not really talking to us. You're not engaging with the DeFi founders. And Vitalik is kind of focusing on all these niche use cases. And I think Vitalik's mindset is that DeFi doesn't need me, right? It's going to thrive, like whatever, right? But I think the developers, they do want Vitalik's attention. They do want Vitalik to talk positively. So I think that's kind of what we talked about. I think Vitalik kind of got that. We'll see if he, actually takes it to heart. But I think the Steady Lads episode with Kane kind of spurred this entire discussion, and that's why Vitalik, the social layer worked, right? The social layer worked. So I think that's also the takeaway. It's like, if we are vocal about change we want to happen, then it does happen. We just have to try hard enough.
My one last message for Vitalik, I think, on this topic is we've talked about how there are these, let's say, bad actors in the space, and there's this cynicism in the space. I get why Vitalik isn't too excited and doesn't want to talk about DeFi too much or invest in it, help build in the future of DeFi. The problem is I think that creates a vacuum where, like, if there's not interest in what Vitalik is pitching and Vitalik's not supporting this space, that interest will shift to the next best thing. And in some ways, the next best thing are these, let's say, money games and wealth transfers from Korea to very successful developers in the US.
Hopefully he didn't pay for everyone's lattes by selling ETH again. Was there like a Uniswap transaction at the same time when the credit card was being used?
Yeah. So I paid for my own meal, so that's bullish ETH. There's less sell pressure.
What was I'm curious, like Jeff, I saw Jeff from Hyperliquid there, and Hyperliquid is not an ETH project, even though there's the bridge to Arbitrum for deposits. It is clearly an Ethereum competitor at this point. Not really ETH DeFi. Was there any sort of tension, or was he just chilling and just listening?
Literally, I don't think Jeff really said a word. He was kind of.
I mean, do you think Vitalik's even heard of Hyperliquid? Like, there's probably a good chance he hasn't.
Probably not. There was a discussion around, like, I guess, whether airdrops are good or bad. Jeff was in the camp that airdrops are good, but then everyone else was like, yeah, it's not the best way. And one thing Vitalik did say is that he wishes there was a better way to launch tokens. He wants to bring back ICOs in like a compliant way somehow, like better token launch mechanisms. So, obviously we're kind of restricted by like what's legal and what's not legal, given the current regime. But I think one potential game that could bring more speculative money back to Ethereum is new ways to bootstrap like speculative games. So hopefully, that does come to fruition at some point. But
did Vitalik comment on the Infinex sale? I mean, to me, that seems like the prime example of like letting everyone get in at the same price and choose what valuation they buy in at or don't buy in at.
Well, Vitalik did not know about Infinex. Apparently, he doesn't even follow Kane on Twitter. So, yeah, I guess that kind of answers the question of like, does he know what's happening within like the DeFi ecosystem?
Well, it feels good we have a man on the inside, Taiki.
Yeah, and we have it that Jeff from Hyperliquid likes airdrops, everybody. So that's some alpha that probably
airdrops good.
Airdrops good for Hyperliquid. That's very interesting, and yeah, I think we've kind of known that Vitalik is not really like on the ground when it comes to the sort of hardcore users and what's going on out there. He doesn't know about Hyperliquid or Infinex or what these guys are doing necessarily, but that's fine. That's like, I don't think that's a big deal. Ultimately, like his role is at this point just sort of nudging things in places that he wants to nudge them and just let the code speak for itself. Justin, I know we're gonna have Kyle Samani on next episode, and we'll get into that stuff. Do you have a good pasta for us in the meantime?
I do, yeah. So this it's a two-part pasta here. So Tom Schmidt was at Token. He gave a talk or two. I think he did a live podcast as well, similar to us. And he says, my top takeaways from Token 2049. Number one, my bags are very good. Everyone is building on my bags and the community is super strong. Your bags are struggling to find PMF in a crisp narrative. People are leaving your bags to build on my bags. And there was truly, like, I don't know if you guys felt this way, but there's like truly this feeling in the air. Like Arthur Hayes did like a big keynote presentation on why like Pendle and Athena are going to rip and Ondo isn't, because he's an investor in Pendle and Athena and wasn't in Ondo. It turned out a week later he ended up selling, I think, all of his Pendle, right? I think that blew up on Twitter. But this was just like a hilarious feeling I got coming out of Token. And that culminated with like Sui's hot narrative boom that week. So Sui was, I would say, like the star of Token 2049, and Sui performance over the course of the conference was incredible. Like I think up like 50% plus. And so Icebergy has this tweet here of the soul guy in the cuck chair, let's say, and his girlfriend here is with Sui. Are you sure I can be with Sui? And the Solana guy is like, yes. And that's a quote tweet of Mike Ippolito's tweet of Sui looks like a catch-up trade for everyone that missed Sol. And it really did feel like that way. The first time I heard about Sui, I should have bought it, but here we are, and I still don't hold any.
It's obviously going to happen. Like Solana is going to be the next Ethereum, which was the next Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin was like having its issues, and then Ethereum kind of stepped into those same issues, and then Solana is just going to stay. It's just not going to be the cool new hot kid that is going to give you the big return, and you're going to be lagging as people are starting to take profit. After Sui, it's going to be the next one. And as we said, it's a game, and we accept the game. We want to know what game we're playing, and we want to play it well. So that's it. We're going to play a good game.
GG.
GG. I got a pasta here. It's built by mom. It's basically like after spending all day on CT, and you go to sleep, and you start dreaming, and this is what it looks like. So it's an AI video of what your dream looks like.
Oh my gosh.
There we go.
We have so many characters in this space. The Curve Mansion, I think that was the highlight for me. I lost it there.
And the Bankless guys were recording a podcast inside.
How good are these like AI videos becoming?
So good.
I know.
So fast how this has happened. Like this was
the transitions are flawless, and they're hilarious. Like the videos just morph perfectly.
So it used to be like Will Smith with spaghetti, but now we literally just have like all of crypto Twitter forming together into so that's amazing video there. Hopefully we'll get more and more of this as AI gets better. All right, everybody. Well, enjoy the bull market that's coming, part 2.
Happy Eigenlayer week. Eigenlayer stimulus checks are coming out this week, which should be a nice little boost to the markets. It's exciting.
Yes. So we're seeing a pre-market. It was at 5 billion. Now it's getting towards 7 billion. So I think the market improving has helped. Eigenlayer could potentially be launching into what is quite a healthy little push up. I'm expecting the usual airdrop thing where we get a lot of selling, and then once the sellers run out after like the first few days, it kind of runs up.
People will dump, and then the narrative will be, well, Celestia is at like 7 billion FDB. This should be like 10 billion at least, and then I'll probably dump at like 8 or 9. That's probably going to be the game I play.
I might see if I can sell and then rebuy. I think if I can sell around 8 and then buy back around 5, that might be a good trade.
All right, so everyone get your sell orders in for $7.99 and your buy orders for $5.01. The way I'm playing this is before the show, Taiki and I were actually looking at this. I looked at the Celestia max, the highest FDV Celestia got to, which I think was 20 billion. Obviously, we're in a different market regime, but I don't see why Eigenlayer's best comp isn't Celestia or even a premium to Celestia, just because it has more mind share, a little bit more signs of adoption right now. But you never know how these things are going to go. But that's my bullish rant. So I'm pretty bullish on this thing. I don't think it's a disaster if you end up holding your airdrop and it goes down 30% in the first week. I think it's probably fine to hold this throughout the next few months of the cycle.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool. All right. Well, happy Eigen Day, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Take care.